that are in the cap and trade and what the EPA are doing have been tried by other countries and have been a disaster.
Well, let me stop you right there, and then we'll go over this. But you mentioned something earlier about 10 minutes ago, and for the decade plus I've been aware of this takeover plan from their own documents, and from what Maurice Strong had said, and Green Cross and Green Shield, and Mikhail Gorbachev and David Rockefeller and the UN openly saying, reduce our numbers down to 500 million. Ever since they started pushing that, I knew that China, India, Mexico, and 160 other third world and developing countries wouldn't have to make the cuts, and it was really a way to deindustrialize the West. But now what you just said is true. Now they're saying, oh, okay, we're going to do retroactive carbon taxing, and we've got to pay $3 billion a year to China, $1 billion a year to Mexico. Calderon's on TV saying it, and Obama's saying, yes, we're going to take taxpayer money and give it to you, and then you're going to pay it to the IMF and World Bank, mainly the IMF is the new bank of the world, as your carbon credits. So it more than just eugenics, that's the overall system. It's a money laundering operation for more international aid, where instead of the money going to the IMF and World Bank, they loan it to dictators or corrupt systems who then keep the money and then hand the resources over to the bankers. This is countries they've already bought off in the third world will now just take the money, keep part of it, and pay the rest right back to David Rockefeller. I mean, this is just... I mean, this is what con artists would come up with if they were just told, think of the most ridiculous, out in the open cons. So even if you believe carbon dioxide's a deadly poison that kills plants, kills animals, it's like nerve gas. The point is that we're all one planet. If China and India don't make cuts and all our jobs move there, there will be more of this VX nerve gas known as carbon dioxide, almost as deadly as dihydrogen monoxide, also water, that deadly nerve gas, more nerve gas released. Can you explain that to us?
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the things about the Kyoto, and you have to go back again to Maurice Strong. He grew up on a farm in southern Manitoba in Canada, and the family were socialist extreme, almost to the point of communism. And just to give you an idea, Winnipeg, the only city in North America that had a democratically elected communist on the city council. But Maurice Strong's family...
No, he admits it. He's a hardcore piece of filth. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Okay. But one of the things, of course, that's underlying that is a redistribution of wealth. And we talked about the IPCC, but the Kyoto Accord that came out of, and by the way, this was another of his big operations, was the Rio Conference in 1992, which George Bush the Elder refused to go to, George Herbert Bush refused to go to. But the Kyoto Accord and the carbon credits was a transfer of wealth. It was a socializing of taking the wealth, the wealth from those people that had worked hard and succeeded, and giving it to those that were not working hard, not succeeding. So this was part of this whole strategy. And of course, again, the vehicle was the CO2. And by the way, the carbon credits is very interesting. Because that idea originally, with the IPCC, they were trying to get the Kyoto through. The U.S., and as you recall this, 95-0, the U.S. Senate voted against it. When Al Gore was the vice president, it was 95-0 against.
When the inventor of the Internet was vice president.
Yeah, and well, he should have got on the Internet and inveigled some more votes. But the Europeans... The Europeans, with Strong and Sir John Houghton, who was the head of the UK Met Office and so on, these people trying to get the Americans on board, said, look, what can we do to make this attractive to you? And the U.S. came back and said, look, give us some credit for the carbon we're taking out of the atmosphere. Because one of the things that you don't hear much about, Alex, is that, yeah, we produce about 7.5 gigatons of CO2 a year, but we remove 50% of that through agriculture and forestry.
But I don't like that either. I mean, I've talked to a lot of other climatologists and biologists that have done the studies on plants. Isn't a carbon dioxide rich atmosphere better for overall life cycle, carbon cycle on the planet? And aren't we at a very low point according to the research?
Oh, yeah, we're at 385 parts per million, which is the lowest level in 600 million years. And one of the things that's interesting that confirms this, Sherwood Itso and his son Craig have done an enormous amount of research on putting plants into enriched CO2 atmospheres. And they found that almost all plants function better at between 1,000 and 1,200 parts per million. In other words, 3 times what they currently are getting. So you could legitimately argue that plants are malnourished. But what's more important, Alex, is that if you look at the last 300 million years, the average level of CO2 in the atmosphere has been around 1,000 to 1,200 parts per million. And some commercial operations, greenhouses, are taking advantage of that by pumping that level into their greenhouse and getting 4 times the yield on their plants. So
but hold on, doctor. It doesn't kill the plants. It's now a toxic nerve gas, the news says. Oh, my God, they breathe it? Stay with us.
He's going the distance. He's going for speed. She's all alone in a time of need. Because he's racing and pacing and plotting the course. He's fighting and biting and riding on his horse. He's going the distance.
You know, I've interviewed a lot of climatologists, a lot of scientists, but I got to say Dr. Ball is the most informed, most on target I've seen. Just absolutely amazing. Dr. Ball, are there any websites people should visit to read all your great writings and research?
Well, there's 2 that I contribute to on a regular basis. One is CanadaFreePress.com. That's all one word. And if they go to, I just had an article in there on Monday. My articles usually appear on Monday. And they have a columnist archive that they can tap into, and there's about 35 articles on there.
Fantastic.
Then, the other site that I contribute to, and the group I helped set up that you mentioned in the promo, was friendsofscience.org.
Absolutely, friendsofscience.org.
Yeah, that one focuses on the science. The Canada Free Press is a mix of the science and the political implications.
Well, I mean, we've proven the scientific case because it's I mean, really elementary, or at least it seems as a layman compared to a lot of other scientific questions. Yeah. I mean, we know plants breathe carbon dioxide, and we know during the break you were mentioning world food supply. Maurice Strong also says, and Kissinger says, shut down world food supply, and that's also part of what this whole greenhouse gas tax is about.
Well, yeah, there's no question about that, and you, as I mentioned earlier, with the biofuels, you see how marginal we are, and one of the things that everybody forgets is that, and I've got a quote that I made up a long time ago: there are no farms in the cities, but there's no cities without farms, and if you ignore the agricultural base, that's the base of any economy. And
well, instead, they're taking that over with the Animal ID, Premises ID from Australia to Canada to the U.S. They are SWAT teaming Amish for selling milk, SWAT teaming egg sellers. I mean, they're really squeezing, and these environmental green brigades are just showing, and I'm not bashing folks with ponytails and Birkenstocks, but now they got sidearms, and they're showing up on farms and ranches and going, look, and they're basically communist.
Yeah. Well, it's you know, it organic is all very nice, and there's a niche market for that. But if we went totally organic, you'd have to cut every forest in the world down to grow the amount of food we're currently producing. And I'm trying to think of the guy, Dennis Avery, a wonderful book called Saving the Planet with Plastics and Pesticides. And he's saying, you know, if they really wanted to save these ecologies and environments they're talking about, we should increase the yields on the land we're currently farming. And we could do that very easily. I mean, we look at the increase of corn yields over the last little while. Now, there are some side effects, no question, but we can monitor those and take care of those. But to just shut it all down is certainly not a solution at all, but that gives you ultimate control, I guess.
Well, the problem is the big agribusinesses own their areas, and they don't leave the land fallow. But you drive around the United States and the world, there's farm areas not being used everywhere.
Well, and that was one of the problems I had with George W. Bush's policies, agricultural policies, where people were buying farms simply to get the government subsidies. It was a better investment than going into the stock market. And that was the fallow land where they were being paid not to grow them, and it's just insanity. And of course, they don't want stockpiling of food at all because that they lose control that way. But no, I think the agricultural base is a very important part